Good afternoon and welcome back to the deepest recesses of the Jacobs estate. We're going to do another fly tying video after a plethora of you folks out there asked me to do this. If you define plethora as three people, that is. Today we're going to concentrate on a standard pattern that began life as a saltwater pattern for striped bass. This is the Murdich Minnow, is designed by Bill Murdich. It moved inland and became a smallmouth bass fly, in part through the efforts of the folks at Tight Lines Fly Fishing in De Pere, Wisconsin. And in fact, I learned to tie this video with my apologies to those folks by watching a Tight Lines video that featured their guide Nate Sipple tying this fly. He does a great job. You might want to look up that video. It's a great fly in many ways, very clever fly. You can call it a minnow pattern, but it's not really an imitation. It's more an exaggeration. It features the trigger points on a minnow that a predatory fish might be looking for. It's designed with a bucktail tail that serves as a rudder and is sort of a support for these flashabou materials on top. There's a silver flashabou in the middle, topped by a gunmetal flashabou over the top. This material. The pectoral fins, or whatever you choose to call them, are made of ice fur. Then the body of the fly, the head of the fly, is a highly reflective synthetic chenille called estats, and then it has eyes attached to it to give it that, again, that exaggerated look of realism about it. This is probably the most common commercial pattern that you'll see, this light to dark thing, and it does follow that pattern of nature of light belly, dark top, and so on. It's expanded from there. The second thing was probably this fly that's just olive on the top. It is colored by a Prismacolor marker, but that same white bucktail tail and so on and so forth, underbody and tail. Then more recently I've begun to see it in with yellow under and brown and black over. Perhaps that might look like a sucker minnow or some such. My contribution to this mess is a fly that I call a koi. If you'll notice, it's quite flashy orange. Looks probably like nothing found in nature, except perhaps a koi, which you don't often find in smallmouth rivers. But first of all, to me, there's just something about orange. It seems to be a fishy color if you want to go the old-fashioned superstitious and non-scientific route in selecting flies and colors. Another terrific aspect of this fly is that I fish a lot of the waters in northern Wisconsin that are either tannic stained, or deeply tannic stained. They have a kind of a root beer color to them. They're clear, but with a definite root beer cast. When this fly gets in the water, it doesn't look nearly as outlandish as it does here at the Vice under artificial light. It looks like something highly visible, which is a solid plus for all of the entire series of these flies. As Nate points out in his video, this is a fly that'll run 6 to 12 inches under the surface, typically, depending on how sparsely or heavily you tie it and some other factors. And it allows you to see that take, that it's a lot like topwater fishing, only you're not on the surface. That's often, there are days when smallmouth just don't really seem to want to come all the way to the top, but a fly that runs just a few inches down might interest them. So here you go. We'll go through the materials in order, and then we'll get to attempting to tie one of these things. First, so we have a Gamakatsu B10S in size 1 hook. The thread is Danville's Flymaster Plus in orange, although that's not terribly critical. A lot of people prefer to tie it with a GSP thread. GSP is extremely strong, but I have trouble with it's so slippery that I sometimes have trouble dealing with it in a fly like this. The Vivus 140 might be another acceptable thread. Again, bright orange bucktail with orange flashabou in the center, topped by holographic orange Flashabou. Those pectoral fins are ice fur hot orange. The main body is going to be this Estats in hot orange. The Estats calls this fluorescent orange number 31. There'll be an underbody of medium rayon chenille. Color is really sort of immaterial. And the eyes are 5/16 self-adhesive eyes, in this case from WTP, although there are several manufacturers there. So I've got a hook that I have previously debarbed, and we'll get that in the vise. And start our thread. I like to start the thread essentially just behind the center of the shank. This will serve as sort of an index point for me. We'll get a base layer there. Incidentally, my waggish friend Larry, after he saw this, said we can't deal with flies that are tied backward. He's referring to my left-handedness. So now all you folks know what like 90% of you look like to me. But I cherish my left-handedness, and I'll deal with it. The bucktail, you want something fairly straight and probably from somewhere around the center of the length of the tail, and probably about, you can cut a bunch that's about 1/3 of an inch or 1/3 of a pencil in diameter to begin with, and then you'll find that you have some shorter under hair and so on that you can pull out of there, clean it up a little bit. Then I pre-established the length of this fly by using my material clip here. This is about 2 3/4 the length of the hook shank. That seems to provide a good baseline for the tail. The tail might be just a little bit hefty yet, so we'll thin it out a little further, trim these up, get them evened out. We can gauge that, square up the butts, pinch it down, take one soft wrap over it to gather it up, and then crank down on it good. Then you can wind the thread to it and come forward. If you can trim this if it offends you, but it really is immaterial to the overall fly. That'll get buried. So there we have that. And then in the center we'll have our orange pearl Flashabou, and we can tease that a little bit to rag out the ends of it a little bit, make it a little bit more natural, so it doesn't look so blunt at the back. And we'll tie that in just slightly longer than the bucktail. Get that secured and back on that. Trim away our excess. Then we'll go with the holographic, the somewhat darker holographic orange chenille. And how to judge the quantity of this is always a somewhat tricky matter. I don't know, you might want to say something like 25 strands or something like that. And again, you can dress these as light, as flashy, as gaudily or as quietly as you'd like. We'll do the same thing here. We'll tease this out a little bit so that the ends are just a little bit ragged rather than perfectly straight across. And we'll extend that just a little further yet over that tail. Then we want to leave this. This looks awkward in the tying process, but we want to leave this a little long, probably about the length of the hook shank, long over the front of the fly. It'll become apparent why in a second here. It's because we're going to reverse that now and tie kind of a collar back here that we'll trim off at about that point, just to give a little bit more of an angle and profile to the fly. Then those orange pectorals. If you have a hard time coming up with the ice fur in this hot orange, EP Fibers orange will do too. Although I like the glisten of this stuff a little bit, and so this material is a challenge to work with. What I like to do is get the entire bunch a little over what I presume is going to be the length. Cut that off square, like so. Then divide the bunch in half as well as you can, as closely as you can. And that'll form our left and right pectorals or kicks, whatever you want to call it. This is another thing. This adds both some degree of bulk to the body and provides part of the action for the fly too. You'll have, well, we'll get this set first. We'll want this probably so it extends equally in front and behind the hook bend, and we'll tie that in. Rotary vise is a tremendous advantage with these things, because you can match the lengths more handily there. There we go. And then we can trim away the bulk that's forward of the tie-in point at an angle, probably, so that we can keeping our thread out of the way. And then we'll wrap over that and come back up. Create kind of a ramp. So the ice fur helps contain your Flashabou as well, so that it doesn't want to wrap the hook and foul and so on. Plus, again, if you look at it from you can see going forward how this is going to, when you strip the fly and pause, that these fins are going to kick the fly left and right and help provide some action to that fly. Next, we'll tie in our hot orange estats. You probably need at least 8 inches of this to get this done. This happens to be a little longer. We can strip away a little of the fuzz, the estats material from the core to make it a little easier to tie in. Another thing that I changed just slightly from the original pattern was the chenille underbody going forward. I do that for a couple of reasons. First of all, it bulks up the fly a little bit further. It might, I suppose, it can soak up a little water and make the fly run a little deeper. We'll pull the fuzz off the core of that too to make it a little tidier to tie in. But it also, I think, provides a better base for the estats than does a bare hook shank. If you simply wind the estats, it's hard to get it tight enough so that it'll maintain position. It's easier for the eyes to get twisted around and so on the length of it. So now we can take our thread forward, and we'll put a little bit of Zap-A-Gap atop that shank too to really secure. Well, we'll add Zap-A-Gap in here and under there too to kind of, that doesn't hurt to reinforce the thread a little bit is what it amounts to. But we'll do this too as well. This will really lock that chenille atop the shank. We'll simply palmer that forward. To the waiting thread, leaving enough room to finish the fly off there, about a hook eye blade space or so. Then we'll wind our estats, and you want to do your best to brush this material back out of the way as you make your turns to create the fullest possible, greatest diameter body. Otherwise, you just sort of tend to clump it down against itself. And that's probably about the last wrap there. We'll capture that, tie it off, trim it short. Take our, create kind of a cone with the first two fingers and our thumb. Sweep this stuff back as well as you can so you can tidy up that head a little bit. We can trim away a little bit of trash that's in the way there. Hold that all back again. Then perform the traditional whip finish. You can even shape this head a little bit at the front if you'd like. You can trim away a little of this to give it a little bit of a taper and get a little bit of the material at the very front of the fly out of your way. We'll whip finish. And the last step is the installation of the eyes. We'll shape this just a little more too while we're at it. When it comes to the eyes, I like to create kind of a pad, a little bit of a recessed pad for the eyes to set in. Otherwise, there's just so much airspace under the adhesive that you often have trouble making the eyes properly bond. So we'll just trim this flat. This is so hairy that we're not going to notice these little pads, or it won't have any effect on the performance of the fly. It'll narrow up the head a little bit, but I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing either. The eyes are self-adhesive, but the adhesive is just no match for a day of fishing and casting these things. That you need this heavy-bodied Loctite super glue, the ultra gel control type to ensure that your eye will stay on at least for a while. The eyes I think really are more for us than for the fish, but still we want as much on our side as we possibly can. And we'll just lay that eye down onto the top like so, kind of even them up a little bit, squish them in there a tad. There we have it. There's our eyes on either side. They're relatively symmetrical. Then we'll let that sit for a minute. We'll let the Loctite set up for just a second while we add some Sally Hansen's hard as nails, which is many people have adapted to fly tying uses. Put a dab of that as head cement here. If you'd like, and if you have UV capacity, you can get some heavy-bodied UV material and create kind of a bridge between the head of the fly and the eye, and UV cure that. That'll help hold those eyes in place better too. Now, while that sets up, our last step is to color the fly. This Prismacolor material, this particular thing is Scarlet Lake, which is sort of a red-orange. And the idea there is again, since we're so closely imitating something found in nature, we want the darker top and the contrasting lighter bottom. And if you've over soaked it a little bit, you can take some paper towel and sort of daub that down to get rid of some of the excess. But there we have it. I think this is a worthwhile addition to the Murdich family. Thanks to Bill Murdich for designing this, and thanks to Nate Sipple and the guys at Tight Lines for teaching me how to tie this fly. I hope we can all overcome this virus very soon and in time for the full green of summer and some smallmouth fishing. Have a good day. Stay safe. Bye now.